The Bevy Game Engine celebrated its 4th year as a project in 2024, with 37,000 stars on GitHub, almost 2 million downloads on crates.io, itch.io engine status, and the new Bevy Foundation. Let's kick it off with a few games. Tiny Glade is a small diorama builder where you doodle whimsical castles, cozy cottages, and romantic ruins. Explore gridless building chemistry as the game adorns your glades with procedural detail. No management, combat, or goals, just kick back and turn forgotten meadows into lovable dioramas. Tiny Glade deserves a bunch of praise for all of their success. The game uses Bevy ECS, which is not the full Bevy package, and is likely the most successful Bevy-related game to date. They notably replaced Bevy's rendering with their own, having started in 0.6, and that renderer is a heavily ray-traced renderer, which they spoke about recently. Tiny Glade is currently available on Steam. Jarl is a fantasy colony simulator game that combines open-world exploration with the management of a Viking settlement in a harsh mythical land. Inspired by games like Valheim and RimWorld and Terraria, it features open-world exploration, base building, resource management, crafting, boss fights, autonomous NPCs, combat trading, and more. Jarl doesn't have a Steam page, but it is doing alpha playtests currently, which you can access via their website. Astortion is a minimalistic, atmospheric puzzle platformer that revolves around gravity. Explore the ruins of the most pivotal research facility on Earth, unlock new abilities that mess with space-time itself, and get to the bottom of what's going on. You can add Astortion to your wishlist on Steam. Times of Progress is a city builder set during the Industrial Revolution. Build industries to extract natural resources, produce goods to satisfy the population, manage transportation routes by train and ship, expand on procedurally generated maps, and trade with nearby cities. You can add Times of Progress to your wishlist on Steam. In Gunbug, unleash mayhem as a heavily armed centipede in this top-down 2D shoot-'em-up. Start with sharp mandibles and build your ultimate arsenal to survive relentless hordes and boss battles. Play solo or team up with up to 9 friends for multiplayer mayhem. Guns, bugs, and chaos. What could go wrong? Gunbug is available to wishlist on Steam. Death Trip is a daring, stylish, high-octane FPS catered to the speed freaks, mid-2000s weirdcore enthusiasts, hypercore fanatics, and adrenaline junkies. Rack up style points as you strafe and bunny hop through a demonic near-death experience. You can buy Death Trip on Steam today. This is just a small subset of the games that are available built with Bevy, and I tried to pick a few that showed a variety of use cases. When it comes to releases, Bevy is pre-1.0, so each 0.x or patch release is effectively a major release. Bevy is also open source, so the first release of the year, 0.13, had 198 contributors over 672 pull requests, while the final release of the year, 0.15, had 294 contributors and over 1,217 pull requests. It's safe to say Bevy is growing, and growing means supporting that growth. When it comes to making releases, Bevy made some great strides in working groups and a new release candidate process. Bevy 0.14 introduced the release candidate process, which has been great for stabilizing releases and giving ecosystem crate maintainers time to both upgrade and provide feedback before the official release. A number of different working groups started and finished this year, including Bevy Color and the Curve Crew, while others are making significant progress. Bevy Color resulted in a new color abstraction and led to separated palettes. The Curve Crew built Bevy's curve abstractions, which are getting more polished every day with easings, interpolations, and more. Bevy Mod Picking Upstreaming is successfully becoming Bevy Picking, integrating successfully with observers. No Standard Bevy has made a surprising amount of progress, making a number of Bevy crates No Standard compatible. This can lead to Bevy running in constrained environments, like retro game systems, or even embedded devices. Bevy CLI, on the other hand, is a bundle of made-for-Bevy tools like linters, easy WASM builds, and more. And one of the largest scale working groups right now, the next generation Scene UI format, is also making progress. Bevy also took steps towards stabilizing the long-term future of the engine with the creation of the Bevy Foundation, which also received 501c3 public charity status in the United States. As a result of the foundation formation, Alice was able to become a paid maintainer, which is hugely important due to the critical role she plays in the project. You can read more about Alice's experience with this on the Bevy website. Bevy also became an engine on itch.io, so start tagging your Bevy games when you upload. Speaking of itch.io, Bevy runs a game jam every even-numbered release, so the 0.14 game jam ran as Bevy Jam 5 with 79 entries and 224 participants. The winner of the jam was Simon Says, a 3D cosmic horror-themed puzzle game. I covered this jam in depth in another video, so go check that out if you want to see the entries in more depth. There's so much that goes into Bevy that it's hard to pick just a few big features to talk about, especially when talking to a wider audience. It's easy to take a look at all of the rendering features that have made it in, such as depth of field, per object motion blur, camera exposure, a retained render world, baked light maps, and more, like volumetric fog, and see the major improvements that are going in. It's a little bit harder for non-Bevy users to understand ECS changes and how they can affect Bevy users. Big ticket features like required components and hooks and observers are changing the way we write Bevy apps. And it's really exciting to see big changes like this making it overall a more pleasant experience with every new Bevy app I write. There are also really important advancements in areas like animation, where Bevy now supports animation blending and animation events. These systems also interact really well with the curve systems that we talked about earlier, and you can now use curves to animate just about anything. There is truly too much to talk about to fit it all into this video, but don't worry, I have videos for every major Bevy release over the last year, so if you want to dive in, definitely go check those out. Before moving on from the features, I just want to give a bonus shout out to virtual geometry. This is a feature that has seen a lot of progress over the last year, and although it is an experimental feature, has been really exciting to see progress. Virtual geometry in Bevy is heavily related to Nanite in that it is an application of meshlets. The author of the feature has written several in-depth deep dives into both what the feature is and how they've implemented it in Bevy, which I'll have linked in the video description. And in the wider ecosystem, things have been developing as well. For example, Nanu, a creative coding framework in Rust, has decided to re-architect as a set of Bevy plugins. This is mutually beneficial work, as Nanu maintainers are contributing to Bevy, making it easier to use features like storage buffers inside of materials. The work for Nanu, as far as I'm aware, currently still lives in a branch, but I'm very excited to see this stabilize and get a release. And the Crate ecosystem also sees a lot of development, from experimental features to things you can use in your project today. I'd like to specifically call out Avian as being one of the major releases of the year. Avian is a physics library which intends to be the next evolution of ECS-driven physics for Bevy, the previous version being Bevy XPBD. It's been fascinating to watch this physics library grow over the last year, and the author has also made big contributions into Bevy itself. I'd also like to make a shout out for Blenvy, which is a Bevy and Blender integration crate, for proving out a number of features, including taking the type registry from a Bevy application and using that to build a UI in Blender where you can apply components. Those components, when your project is exported through GLTF, can then be pulled into your Bevy application and attached into scenes. This work was the basis for a new Bevy remote protocol endpoint, which allows you to get the JSON representation of the type registry, and pioneered some really great work in this area. I'd also like to make a shout out to the networking libraries in the ecosystem. Projects like Bevy Replicon, Lightyear, and Renet, which just hit 1.0, are continually making it easier to build multiplayer projects in Bevy. For example, Renet was used to make Gunbug, which we saw earlier. And I'll end with a comment about the editor. Bevy currently doesn't have an editor itself, but there is work towards one happening. The Bevy editor prototypes repo contains experimentation following a specific vision laid out on the website linked in the repo. Bevy UI is seeing continued progress, and the next generation scene and UI system is also making progress, with required components landing, BSN, and more. There have been community prototypes for things like BSN and patches, as well as I Can't Believe It's Not BSN, which recently implemented a BSN type template macro that you can use today. Progress is being made on an editor, and integrations with existing tools like Blender, with Blenvy like we just talked about, LDTK, Tiled, and more exist today. Overall, 2024 was a really exciting year for Bevy, and I'm looking forward to what 2025 has in store. If you'd like to keep up to date, I cover both the week-by-week updates with This Week in Bevy, which, aside from being a website on its own with an RSS feed, is also a playlist here on YouTube. I also cover every major release, so expect a video for 0.16, just like I have a video for 0.15 and 0.14. And thank you to everybody that is either part of Bevy or the Bevy community. This is a really enjoyable area to spend time in, and I'm thankful for all of the work that you all put in. I know I wasn't able to mention everything in this video, but I'm looking forward to seeing you all over the next year. That's it for 2024. I'll see you all in 2025.